Okay, here we are on Artesania Latina Stagecoach. This is the first part. We're going to be building the wheels. So the first thing we need to do is get out the rims of the wheels. These are for the front. I have the back ones right here. Each one is made up of 4 pieces that you need to glue together into a circle. Hopefully get into a perfect circle. I'll be happy if I can get to visually look like it's a perfect circle. So these will need sanded off on the ends here. I'm not going to sand the insides and outsides yet because the outsides are going to get a tire on it, so they'll be sanded once it's assembled. The insides are going to get spokes on it, but they'll be sanded once it's assembled to get this inside edge done. So like I said, these are going to go together like this. In the meantime, another part of the instructions, next part of the instructions with the spokes themselves. First thing it says to do is to take the 4mm dowel and sand 2 sides of it so it's flat, which I've done to this one here. So, you know, this one rolls nicely. This one doesn't roll at all because it's flat on 2 sides. I wanted to go through how I did that really quick. The instructions say to either use your Dremel and sand it or just a sanding block. I'm using this little 2-inch plane. And what I did to do it, so I came on one end and using my fingers as a guide, I came and made a nice flat edge on one end, flipped it over, put that flat edge down. Now you have a spot you can hold it where it's not going to roll, and you can come back all the way you can and do the same thing, but now you can get a full length out of it and get a nice flat edge on it. So you can get one side done here, start to be flat, and I can come over and I can do choke up on a little bit so I get to the flat spot, and I can come over and do this side and start getting it flat. With that flat there, now I can flip it over end for end. So the piece I started on is now on this side, and I can start getting it flat the full length of it. And when you have that flat on there, you can hold it nice and securely so it's not going anywhere on you. So I got this end done. I can flip it end for end again. Still have a nice flat spot here I can hold. And I can keep using the plane to bring it down. Once I'm happy with one side, I can flip over to the other side and do the same thing. With that, I'm pretty happy with how flat it is on either side. Might need to use some work on this side to thin it down a bit, but that's no big deal. You just come back and take a couple of swipes on it, and from there, now I have a spoke that is, instead of round, it's shaped with a flat on either side and a round on the other 2 sides. So that gives me the shape of the spokes that they're supposed to be. So now I have 2 rods set up here about the same thickness or same flats, and I can cut my spokes out of that. Now, since you need 12 spokes per wheel, that's going to be using probably the majority of the dowels they give you this particular size of 4mm. If you run into one where the grain's wonky on it and the plane doesn't work, you may have to just flip it around and deal with it, or that's the one that you may have to use just a Dremel or the sandpaper on. So I'm going to go ahead and get my wheels glued up into circles, both front and rear. And from there, we'll come back and start doing the spokes. The wheels, they say to paint them yellow, but like the spokes, what they say is to paint the round sides yellow and the flat sides leave natural. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to paint the spokes prior to gluing them in, so I can get them painted, sand off the flats again, paint the hubs yellow, paint the wheels yellow, and then glue them all together that way. But I want to think about that, because another thing you can do is just glue them in, paint them yellow, and like they say in the instruction manual, you come back with your X-Acto knife and just scrape the paint off the flats, which may be easier as well. So I'll play with that, figure out what I'm doing. In the meantime, I'm going to get all my wheels glued up. Thought I'd share really quick also my professional clamping job I'm using on these wheels to get them around. Just some tape, leave them open, tape them up with so that you can have one open still. Glue them up, then roll them around and tape them shut. Then I'm putting on a little spring clamp on each joint just to make sure the joints stay lined up, less sanding later. Plus little spring clamps don't add much weight, but it does help to keep them pressed down flat so you don't end up with a taco shaped wheel. So I share that, and I'll come back and we'll start getting the spokes in place, I think. Okay, so I have the outer edge of the sanded. The instructions say glue these 4 fellies together, then take and put the spokes and the hubs in, paint them, and then put the tire on. I've already broken one of these seams apart, trying to sand the inside. So I decided what's going to be better, basically to put the outside tread on first, which will hold it into the loop, make it stronger, and then work on sanding the inside so I can put the spokes in. So that's what I'm going to do now. So I'm going to use wood glue to put it on. The way I look at it, from the instructions, you're going to paint this yellow, then put the tread on, then paint the tread black. You're going to have to do that anyway. You know, paint the tread after you get everything together. I guess it's a tire, excuse me. Wagon wheels have a steel tire. These are this era. So I'm going to go ahead and glue this on. Like I said, I'm just using wood glue. Should be fine. I'm going to do that for all 4. Once that's done, I can come back, I can sand the surface. Looks like right here where there's a ridge in it. And then I can sand the inside, and then I can work on getting the hubs and the spokes in place. So there's my seam. I want to start somewhere towards the center of the felly with the wood. And the wood that's going on is just, I believe it's walnut. Thin veneer, and it will be more than adequate to hold this in place. Let's see. Lost my wax paper. This is where I'm starting. Right in here. And I'll just go ahead and clamp it around. To get this first piece on all the way to the end for the first section of it. And just keep going all the way around. Instructions say to cut this wood to something like 400 millimeters in length first. Don't do that. You'll end up being long or short anyway. Chances are short. You end up with a gap. time for cutting it when you get it glued in place or clamped in place. Oops, get back on here. I'm going to leave this undone for now. Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to clamp it here. I'm going to start at the very beginning here, and I'm actually going to just tape it in place. Something like that. That way I get the clamp out of my way. Then I can bring this one around on top of it. See where my end is. And just cut it to fit. Hopefully without cutting my finger. And that will give me the wraparound I need. One clap right at the joint to hold it in place, and then that can sit overnight. Make sure you're pretty much centered. So we'll do 3 more times of that and we'll call it good. Not liking that though. I'll take these things off. Put a heavier one on. And that's how it gets clamped on. When this is dry, I can go ahead and sand the surface, sand the inside, excuse me, and start putting the hub and spokes in. So once I get all 4 of them glued up, I'll come back with that. Okay, I have my rims done for the wheels. Went ahead and put the tread on, the wood on the outside that makes up the actual tire. The steel band, essentially on the real thing. And now I'm working on making these bands for the hub, the reinforcing bands. If you look at the instructions yourself, you notice that you'll find that step 1 is the rim, hub and spokes all together. Step 2 is painting it. Step 3 is putting these wood on the outside, and step 4 is making up these bands. I think it's a better way to do it to put the rim together, sand the outside, put the wood on it. So step 1, you put the rim together, sand the outside, go to step 3, I think it is, to put the tire on, jump over to step 4, and make your bands for your hubs, but don't glue them on. Then come back to step 1 to put the hubs inside the rims. So I've been making these bands for the hubs, trying to get them to fit good. They'll be blackened later. And to make those bands, you're starting out with a hub. And then you shape them. Shaping them, I'm just using these jeweler's pliers. What makes them special is they're cone shaped. And I can come in here and I can just come in and just start right at the end and just start giving them a little bend, bring them around. And start curving the metal. And pretty soon you'll be able to get a loop going. It's not going to be perfect, but you're going to get it perfect as best as you can later. So I can look at it and see I have a flat spot here, so I can come back into that spot, get that shaped up. And then you start curling it around on itself. Figure out there's another flat spot here and get it shaped up a bit. But it's all about making it so it fits around the hub a little bit tighter than it needs to be. As you get close to getting it to final shape, you start thinking about where you're going to cut it. And what you're looking for is to get it so it's nice and round on there. This one's got a little taper to it, so it's sticking out a bit on one side. And you can come in, figure out where your end needs to be, mark it, and I'm just marking it with a knife. And you can come in and just cut it off, and hopefully it's the right length. This is looking pretty good. I can see it's just a hair long, so I have to trim some of that off, I think. But, short of it, that's how I'm making these bands. And I'm doing them now because it's easier to make them fit this hub. Get the camera again. Make them fit this hub before you get the hub into the rim with all the spokes on it. So you can see this one just needs a little bit more inside, or make it a little smaller in its curvature. So now I got it curved so it actually overlaps a little bit. So when I put it on, it's held on pretty tight, and I can just see how it's fitting. See, it's a hair long. So I just come in. Trim a sliver off. Stick it back on, see how it fits. That's fitting pretty good. A little bit of a gap there on the end because it's not quite straight. But I can see I need to take just a little bit off again. Don't cut too much off or you end up with a big gap, which I probably will have right there. Oh, looks pretty good. Looking good. So you need to make 4 of the larger bands to go on the outside, and then 3 smaller ones, actually it's on the inside, and 3 smaller ones to go on the outside of the hub. So I'm going to finish that up, and the next thing I'll do is come back and put the spokes in. Now that I have the rings made for the hubs, I'm working on the spokes. I made one wheel up here. This is one of the rear wheels. And every one of these spokes pretty much has to be custom fit to the wheel you're building. To do that, for the rear wheels, just instructions say you're using 60mm spokes. So I have my miter saw here set up with a block set at 60mm. So I can cut 2 spokes at a time, and you use 2 of those dowels you made up earlier with the flat sides. So every wheel takes 12 spokes, so I just cut off 12 spokes and start getting them fit in. So there we are, 12 spokes, all pre-shaped, cut roughly to length. And basically what's going to happen is you're going to start sticking them in the hub. Two of them opposite each other. And the first thing you need to do is, I'm starting with the spokes on the seams here for lining up. That way I get two sets perpendicular. And what I'm looking at is I'm seeing if I have one side that's a little bit wider than the others, the spokes fit in. You notice this side here, there's a lot of overhang. This side here, there's not as much. That means I'm wider this way than I am this way. So wheels out of round, no big deal. It's not like you're going to be hauling freight or passengers on. This is going to sit on a shelf and be displayed, and you won't notice that. So you do some filling here. But once you get figured out which way you're going to put it, you start working on getting your hub centered. And to do that on these first two spokes, because you're going to want them roughly the same length, I try to sand them both at the same time. I'm just using a coarse sandpaper here to get them to length, sand them to length. It doesn't take much. And when I sand, I make sure the piece I'm sanding, the end I'm sanding, always sand the same end. And I stick that in to the hub, because it's going to end up a little crooked more than likely. So you get them in, get them sanded, get them test fit. A little short, but if you just pull out a little bit on one side or the other, you'll get a nice tight fit in here. And with that, one set's cut. But you want to make sure you get it centered this way as well. So I did on mine. So I got these ends glued in. I got two glued in, and while it was drying, had it sitting on a set of stands so that I can move it and get it centered, and then come back in. Sorry, get to where you can see it. I can start measuring the other cross. And see where I need to get that center at. That way you start working on these to go this way, and you can end up with 4 spokes perpendicular, one set perpendicular to the other. So I'm going to go ahead and get those in, and we'll work on the rest of them. Okay, so I've got my cross spokes in now, and using the grid on my cutting mat, I just line it up and see if it looks good. Reasonably square. Eyeball it, see if it looks reasonably square, which it does right now. So with that, I can go ahead and glue those spokes in, and then I can get the rest of them in, always going across from each other. I don't glue any of the other 8 spokes in until such time as I have them all in. But I want to make sure they're all in, touching, everything looks square, evenly spaced before gluing those in. Everyone's going to have to be custom fit to the reel. Sand down, make it fit. I'm going to go ahead and finish gluing these in, get all those spokes in, and come back. Okay, here we are back on Stagecoach wheels. I have my wheels painted up. I clear coated them, got the bands on. You see how those are made previously. Scraped down spokes and did the Danish oil on the inside to make those things nice. Last thing I need to do on these wheels before they're done is to put the little nails around. Every spoke has 2 nails on either side of it. So I've been going through. I'm not going to show them all. I'm going through and just doing a little pin vise drill on either side of the spoke so it goes all the way through. One on each side. I'm just eyeballing these. So I can get them all the way through. I'll do that for all of them. Right now I'm just going to show the one. Once I have that in there, I can come back and grab one of these brads and just stick them in. I'm not gluing them because they fit tight enough. I don't think they're going to need glue. Plus, once I get the black on in place, I'm going to clear coat them. So I get 2 of them, one on either side, for a total of 48 of these little brads per wheel. So that's 192 for those of you who want to count. Once you get all those in, this is one of the front wheels, you can go ahead and paint them. And all I'm doing with painting them, and if you don't want to do the nails, you can do the same thing. It'll look just fine. This toothpick, cut the end off flat, dip it in the black paint, and touch it to the nail head. And just do that for every one. And let that dry. And when you're done, you end up with a wagon wheel, well, stagecoach wheel, with all your nails around the edge on both sides. Now, my paint job, like I said, is not the best. I'm not happy with the paint, but during the time where paint shortage and all that, I was not able to find, buy a bunch of different brands of yellow paint and get it right, get it one that I like. So I'm going to settle with this. Just pick up my 2 best ones beyond the display side. So I'm going to go ahead and finish all these nails off camera. And the next time we get together, we'll be starting on step 5, which is the actual frame of the stagecoach. And I'll show what these look like then. In the meantime, thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoy the videos. And remember, when you're building a model, the only person you have to please is yourself.